I'm really pleased to start this last session. I'm very excited about it. We have Jonathan Kramer. Jonathan is the founder of Telecom Law Firm. He's the guy in the beard over there, although beards are in fashion. So, you know, you can, who knows?
All of my sons have beards.
My beard has not been off in over 40 years.
Wow.
Most people have never seen me without a beard, and I intend to keep it that way. I was told early in my life that if I had a beard, I would never succeed, and I have worked to prove that right.
Oh, awesome.
So Jonathan has been involved with community television and cable television for as long as I've been involved in this, and probably longer, so a long time. And he's not only an engineer, but he is also an attorney, and he's been around the block with all of these sorts of issues for a long time. So we're really pleased to have him here. He's one of the key national experts on these topics. And our other person who I'm really excited to have and introduce is Matt Sluga. He's with Trempealeau County Community Co-op. I know I got that wrong. Trempealeau County Communications Co-op. Oh, you're muted still, Matt.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay, Tri-County Communications Cooperative, yes.
Okay.
And our local PEG channels are provided by Trempealeau County Community Television.
That's where I get the problem. So John Kelly works with Matt all the time. And Matt is essentially the cable operator for Trempealeau County through the co-op. So he's providing broadband, cable, telephone, and PEG to a broad area of the community around Trempealeau County. Matt's been involved in these issues since 1995, and we are leaning on Matt for his technical expertise on cable television systems. And so what we wanted to do today is talk about some of these technical issues. We have quite a few on our menu of possibilities, from HD, which we are definitely going to cover, but also electronic program guide, broadband, 5G, and wireless drops. And because we only have an hour, what we wanted to do was find out which of the topics besides HD are you most interested in us talking about. So Deb is going to put a poll up, and you'll have the opportunity to vote for your top. You can vote for more than one, and then we'll find out later in the program which topics Jonathan will be also picking up besides HD.
Would you like me to do that now then, so they can get it done?
Yeah, let's get it out of the way. And
okay. Yeah. You guys remember you can choose more than one.
Come on, am I the only one that's not thinking that in their heads? Okay.
Okay, so part of the motivation for this session is that, you know, we are talking to legislators about asking cable operators to do certain things for us, in particular HD, EPG. And, you know, essentially Charter has said they're just not interested, and legislators are generally persuaded that, gee, you know, we don't want to make them do this stuff, tell them how to run their business, make them spend all this money. And so we wanted to get more understanding of what is technically involved, in particular, what is involved with going to HD for cable operators, and to try to understand the technology a little bit better and all the possibilities. And as it turns out, we had several conversations with Matt and Jonathan about this, and it was fascinating. And so Matt is going to try to cover what we discussed probably over 3 hours into about 20 minutes for you to sort of encapsulize what might be involved in a cable operator offering HD, and it's going to vary from system to system. So, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it away.
Hey, hello everyone. Yeah, as she said, so I've been in the industry since about 1995, so about 25 years. I was just going to give you some brief technical knowledge. Mainly it's a technical spiel I'm going to have here for you, but I guess we're a bunch of techies anyway, so nobody should be offended or too bored by that. So here we go. You know, when I started in the industry, we started off with analog TV. That's basically all we had. We were actually doing a project circuit type of format. In fact, we were the first company in the country to do a project circuit type of format with schools with two-way communication. That started in, I believe it was 1978. So, you know, we've been doing this a long time and working with our schools and our communities and our, like I said, our courthouse that has our local PEG channel. They've been around forever. So then, you know, in the 90s, we tiptoed into broadband as a company. Very low bandwidth, obviously, at that time. Everything was analog TV and very low bandwidth, you know, put towards broadband. Then we went to digital TV, which helped, allowed us to have more channels in the same amount of bandwidth, basically. And then, you know, into HD, to IPTV, all the while we're adding more and more bandwidth for broadband. So that was the trend. And that's kind of how the industry has gone as a whole. You know, we at times followed and at times been a leader in some of these technologies in the industry. So that's kind of a brief history. As most of you probably know, your two-way communication started out with analog mods and demods, and that's how you got your content up to the cable operators. Most long-haul connections were fiber. You might have had coax and a return RF subband type of transport, but most connections, at least if they were longer, they were fiber, and as they are today. Then we enter into the digital world. So there's all kinds of possibilities with the digital world. I mean, the compression, the you know, using it over IP. There's all different technologies and architectures. Digital opened up the doors for many different things. I'm trying to share a slide here just to show you what a channel space looks like for a cable system. So each channel space, where it used to be analog, you had a 6 megahertz channel space. Can everybody see this slide?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So in that 6 megahertz channel space, in the old days, you could get one analog audio video channel in that channel space. When digital came about, we could get 10 to 15 digital SD channels in that same amount of channel space, or that same amount of spectrum. When HD came out, which was generally after anything digital, for the most part, you could get 3 HD channels in that same 6 megahertz channel space. And now with better forms of compression, such as MPEG-4, you can get up to 6 HD channels in that channel space. So that's kind of the basis for a cable company on what they're looking at as far as their spectrum. They only have so much spectrum allotted to them, and they're trying to squeeze all these channels into that channel space, all these TV channels. Well, you enter broadband into the mix, and that's taking up the same spectrum. So they, as broadband keeps growing, they keep condensing the TV space down. I'll just leave that up. So with the present day cable systems, there's a lot of different technologies and architectures that are being used today to deliver the channels, to deliver broadband. As far as TV channels go, you've got digital with multiplexing, whereas you see the 10 to 15 SD channels can fit in the one channel space, or the 3 to 6 HD channels. You've got switch digital, which is another technology where it's sort of like a routed channel delivery for spectral efficiency. So they basically only send the channels by request, so they're not using up all of their spectrum to dump all these channels down the line that maybe people aren't even watching at all. So they're counting on not all the channels being watched at the same time. So they're counting on the top 50 channels and then maybe a handful of 20 others. So possibly 70 out of, who knows how many they offer, 200 channels. But the switch digital allows them to only push down those 70 watch channels down the pipe and leave the rest of the pipe open for broadband. You've got clear QAMs, so you've got actual TVs in people's homes that can tune into a QAM cable channel and decode it and display it without a set-top box. A lot of companies are doing that with some of their basic or expanded basic channel tiers, which most of the PEG channels are on. You've got a lot of other technologies. I mean, some of you have probably heard of MPEG and IPTV and multicast and unicast and DSL and DOCSIS, and these are all either mechanisms to transport the content or some kind of encapsulation method other than modulating. So you've got MPEG, you may have MPEG-2 and MPEG-4, where MPEG-4 is just a higher form of compression. IPTV, there may be linear IPTV is something that we offer, and then there may be over the top, which is similar to IPTV. It's delivered via IP, it's just in a different fashion. Multicast, unicast, it's the same thing. It's just two different ways to deliver that IP content. One of the biggest things that cable companies, I guess, have an issue with in keeping up with is their CPE, their customer premise equipment. And, whether it's a customer's own TV or the cable company's set-top box, can that CPE decode and display the content that they're seeing, or that it's getting? There may be some legacy equipment out there, and I know there's a lot of it that can only decode MPEG-2. So if the company did offer HD, they could only offer 3 HD channels per that 6 megahertz channel space. If they are limited with their customer CPE. If all of their customers had MPEG-4 capable set-top boxes, then they could probably squeeze 6 HDs into that same channel space. You can see how a cable company would be a little hesitant to offer an HD channel if they could only get 3 of them in that channel space, and that's like gold to them. Even with the limits of the CPE, the good news is that for a modest price, most of this content can be either transcoded or transformed in something that's usable, a format that's usable by that CPE. It could be either transcoded at the edge of their systems or at their head ends as they receive it from you, or at your studio. It can be transcoded or transformed and sent upstream to them in an already usable format for all the customer CPEs. Am I boring everybody yet? So as far as the transcoding or transforming, examples are that, and some of you guys are probably doing that already. Your ASI to IP, you may be doing it in studio, baseband to IP, or baseband to ASI, or ASI to QAM, or ASI to analog RF, even possibly to send it, up to those companies if they're still offering an analog service. MPEG-2 to MPEG-4, transcoding, or back again. You may, in our head end, we're going back and forth from MPEG-2 to MPEG-4 and back to MPEG-2, depending on what platform we're sending it out on. So yeah, we're doing all kinds of things with transcoding, transforming different formats. With CPE, you've got your TVs, your set-top boxes, and now streaming hardware has to be included in that mix. So you've got your Fire Sticks and your Roku boxes, and for the streaming services such as Roku and Vudu, Hulu, or ones offered by cable companies themselves like Spectrum, or HBO Max, or YouTube TV, Disney Plus. That is the wave of the future in my eyes, and I believe the industry's eyes, is the streaming TV, over-the-top services, and I believe that is where you as PEG channels, local access channels, that's where you need to be viable and be out there for everyone to see, basically, without just fading away on the old cable system. I would go to slide 2 so everybody can see that. So this is just an example. If you look on the left-hand side, the legacy bar there, when you have the orange part, where is our traditional video bandwidth. That's what everything basically was video back before the 90s. You maybe had a little upstream bandwidth dedicated, and that was most likely some kind of video return for something also. And then possibly in the 90s, a little broadband downstream bandwidth with a very tiny amount of upstream bandwidth there. Present day, in the middle column, you notice the video bandwidth is shrinking, and the broadband is really growing on the downstream, and slightly growing on the upstream as well, not quite as fast as the downstream. But that's pretty typical, and I would say most cable companies nowadays are somewhere between that present and future bar graph, or bar in the graph, as far as broadband and video is concerned. You look to the future, there's going to be very little bandwidth allocated to video in the future, to at least some kind of a linear type video service. The video is going to end up being in that gray bar, in the broadband bar, and in the blue, as people do more upstream streaming and security cameras and things like that. So you can see that the typical cable, traditional linear offering is going to be shrunk down to almost nothing in the future. Might be a lifeline tier for people that have a QAM TV, QAM tuner TV, for somebody that's not savvy at all with internet, and they just want their few basic channels, and that's what it's going to be limited to.
Could I ask a question, Matt?
You bet.
So you were talking about how TCC is offering cable service today, where it's a digital cable service that is not really dealing with dealing with the signal in terms of 6 megahertz channels anymore. But you're selling it as a cable television service, but it's completely digital.
Well, it's actually, that's where we're talking about the streaming service or over-the-top type service. So, you know, your charter's got a Spectrum, I forget what they call it, Spectrum streaming, I think it is. AT&T TV Now. It's an over-the-top version. Basically, they're same channels that they offer on their linear service, but it's via broadband connection. So you're requesting a channel. You might have you might even have a set-top box. I mean, in our case, we could provide a set-top box that could display it, or you can use a Fire Stick, you know, Roku box or something like that. And you basically load in your application. So if we had TCC TV, we load up that application on a Roku box. We go in there. It's got the channel guide. You know, it shows up somewhat similar format as you would see on like a set-top box, a traditional set-top box. And you see all your channels. It might be the exact same lineup that you have on a traditional cable offering. And you can go through and pick whatever you would like and watch it. And, you know, it enables more features, you know, such as Restart TV. You know, you can start, record whatever without having an actual DVR, maybe a cloud DVR service at that point. But yes, so we were moving. We started out with analog, went to digital QAMs, then the linear IPTV. We're now offering IPTV over DOCSIS, so we can offer it over a coax plant. So basically where a traditional cable resides. And now over the top, which is basically over a broadband connection or any broadband connection. So it's just another way of offering that service. Does that clarify it a little bit, or?
Yeah, I was wondering if there was some sort of a digital middle ground between over-the-top broadband and continuing to use like the traditional cable plant in a slightly different way than allowing the signals to be divided up into 6 megahertz channels.
Well, in between there would be your linear IPTV. And that's something that we do offer that too. We've been offering that since about 2006, I believe. But so that's it's more of a linear type delivery, but it is over IP. So it does enable more function and things like that. And you're not worried about the 6 megahertz channel spacing. I mean, it's not something that a lot of the large cable companies are doing. There's a lot of small telcos that have started offering video services in the last 15 years or so that are doing a linear IPTV type format. But as far as the large cable companies, they basically, they've got a coax network, so they switch from the traditional type delivery to switch digital for some of them to now over the top over their broadband connection. And once you get to that broadband connection, an HD channel is an HD channel. It doesn't take up any more bandwidth on their network unless somebody's pulling that channel and pulling the one next to it and the one next to it and the one next to it. So it's a unicast type of connection there. So that would only affect the broadband bandwidth, not their linear TV allocated bandwidth.
Jonathan, did you want to contribute anything to this at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mary. What Matt has talked about so far is terribly important because you have to understand that the technology is evolutionary and it's not very revolutionary. Now, by way of some background, I come to this from a little bit different perspective. I started in the cable industry in 1977, 78, roughly then, when my first system had 12 channels plus one pay in the mid-band. It was all analog. It was barely held together. And through the years, I progressed up through the industry to become a regional. I started as a system engineer for the system here in California, Malibu. And over the years, I progressed up to being a regional engineer in charge of a bunch of Southern California systems for a large operator who no longer exists, got gobbled up. And then in 1984, I went over to the government side and started as a cable system inspector. In fact, I've inspected a number of jurisdictions in Wisconsin over the years and did that for a long time. And at my wife's behest, after testifying a number of times in federal court cases on cable TV matters, including the landmark Playboy v. U.S. case, she said, "Why aren't you an attorney?" And I apparently didn't have a good reason that day, so I ended up going to law school and becoming an attorney, and then after that, completing my education with a master's of law and a doctorate in law and policy. But the reason I tell you all of that is because my perspective is a little bit different. It's based on technology, but now that technology has provided the shoulders upon which I, as a lawyer, look at these issues. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth across both of the things that Matt has talked about so far. I'll add to it, I hope. As a practical matter, we understand that the cable industry in whole, I don't have to pick on one particular company. It's an industry-wide issue for the major MSOs. They want to kill what you're doing. You don't produce a profit for them. You don't draw enough eyes to make them interested in you. That's a policy issue. But from your perspective, you want to get your channels in HD to the head end and have the head end repeat it back down to the subs in HD. And the operators are telling you, can't do it, can't, too much, too expensive, whatever. And as a lawyer, I look at the FCC rules and say, you're supposed to be carrying PEG channels in the same quality as broadcast channels. And I'm wondering, if they're carrying broadcast channels, are they limited to SD? I don't think so. So one of the tools I think we underutilize is the fact that they do have an FCC obligation to carry this type of cable carriage at the same quality level as they carry broadcast. So the argument that they can only do SD is specious. And in terms of transport, the cost, and I think, frankly, Matt made an excellent point here, the cost of transport between studios and head ends, I don't even know how you measure it. It's so low because it's part of existing infrastructure. I see Deb smiling at that one. So I think looking at what the rules are and how they can be utilized to accomplish the goals of promoting good quality, because the last thing that we want is for a cable system subscriber to tune to your channels and be subjected to breakups. That was me, by the way. Subjected to breakups simply because they're not transporting you at the same quality that they would transport broadcast. Now, in terms of switched video, which Matt touched on, I think that's where it's going. I've been actually lecturing to NATOA for 20 plus years. That's where we have to end up going, because frankly, for cable operators, the cost of carriage of channels to the back of a TV set for it to sit there idle is higher than sending you switch video. More importantly than that is that although they get a tremendous amount of statistical data about viewership now, they actually get more through Switch Video than they do through the current ways of monitoring everything that their subscribers watch. And they do. And I think we all know that because that's valuable information that they sell, and the FCC makes sure that it's supposed to be aggregate data, not individually identifiable subscriber data. And as the cable operators become more of the broadband providers, not only to the customers, but to major providers such as the wireless industry, cable operators right now are providing a tremendous amount of downstream and upstream capacity over fiber to the wireless industries because, frankly, the cost of getting cable fiber to a cell site, getting service via a cable operator is much less than renting that capacity from the incumbent telephone operator. So you're dealing with an industry that is under change and is looking to maximize its profits because, frankly, it's losing subscribers. As a basic premise, cable operators are losing subscribers now. So they are looking to better monetize their systems, and you don't help them do that.
Just to clarify, John, that they are losing TV subscribers. They're gaining broadband subscribers at this point.
Your point is well taken. Absolutely correct. They're gaining broad. And in fact, I'm connected to you right now off of a business grade Spectrum cable connection here in Los Angeles. I'm in Santa Monica at the moment, which oddly, because it's a business class subscription service, provides me with no more reliability than the residential service. But for paying the business rate, I get to have a slower downstream rate, 100 megabits slower than my service downstairs for my TV. Weird economics, voodoo economics, certainly to be.
Sounds like you need to fill out a video service provider complaint form, John.
Here in California, back in 2006, the cable industry was very successful in getting the regulation and franchising of cable TV up to the state level. So I can complain all I'd like. And that's what's going to happen. So, you know, it just is what it is. Anyway, those are some opening remarks to build off of what Matt's talked about. But the fundamental issues here is he's talking about technology. I'm talking about that we need to look at this both in the context of law and in the context of the realities of business propositions. We're lucky that companies like Matt's and other enlightened companies understand the value of this. But when you deal with bean counters, unfortunately, they just don't see it. So this is a fight that we continue to fight, not just in Wisconsin or California, but everywhere. And understand that from the regulatory environment, we are fighting an FCC which is completely captured. For those of you who don't know the term a captured agency, I teach at Northeastern University. I teach doctoral and master's students about regulation. And I use the FCC as an example. I say, look, the FCC is a captured regulatory authority. Instead of regulating the industry it's charged to regulate to protect consumers, it is really enabling the industry it's supposed to regulate at the expense of consumers. That is our current FCC. And you have to bang your head against that wall because the lawsuits are important. We're currently suing, my firm is suing the FCC in a couple of wireless matters of rules that they've done, but you have to understand you're dealing with an incredibly powerful opponent who controls its regulator. So folks, how's your day been going?
Oh, goodness.
You know, I'd like to actually throw it back to Matt for a second and ask him to talk about the non-video issues, because I think understanding and framing a little bit more about broadband over the top, data carriage and things like that, you get a better sense of the companies that you're dealing with. Matt, have I opened the door here for you?
Yeah, well, yeah, going back to the technical side, I guess it's not so ominous.
Good.
What are you referring to? I guess how we deal with it, you know, from a regulatory standpoint, or from a
Let me better
customer
frame a
standpoint?
question. Let me better frame a question for you. What do you think cable systems will look like in 5 years in terms of technical platform? What are they going to look like?
I really think it's going to be a broadband connection with video delivered through that broadband connection. And it, you know, it may be 5, 10 years down the road, but at some point, the linear TV, even switch digital video, I believe, is going to go away.
I absolutely tend to agree with you on that approach. I think that's where we're going as well. And for all of you who are kind of trying to piece together what the heck we're talking about, understand that right now, everything is ones and zeros. I don't know of a cable system that actually, I'm sure they're out there, but I don't know of any systems that still have real analog as their real means of transporting anything. Frankly, because it's almost impossible to get equipment to transport analog. And it's almost impossible to, well, you can find it, but you know, when you're talking about transporting for upstream purposes, the cost of transporting upstream an HD stream versus a SD stream is effectively the same. And that's especially true if your studio is in charge of providing the edge equipment. So the environment that we're in now is really very different than it was 10 years ago, when there was still a lot of analog and digital was consigned to the top tiers only. Now it's frankly financially inconceivable for a cable operator not to go digital, because otherwise you go back to Matt's slide where it's one analog channel and 6 megahertz. You just can't support a cable operation sending 6 megahertz for one channel, hoping against hope that that's what the customer is going to be viewing at that particular time. Sending that to the back of the set-top box is just financially ludicrous now. So we're heading towards everything being digital, everything being menu driven. I've been actually talking about menu systems for, gosh, better part of 20 years through NATOA meetings. And that's why one of the fights that you need to continue to fight is to make sure that you're on the top of the menu system, not 2 or 3 layers deep, because that's another way of slowly starving your audience. Now, what about menu systems?
You mean as far as a guide, or?
Sure, as far as guides, and how does everyone here protect themselves from getting so far down the menu system that, yeah, it's the old equivalent that if you were on a channel 3, traditional channel 3 or channel whatever it was in your particular market, you knew that you were going to get a lot of people seeing you because you were right there. The channel guide is the equivalent. If the channel guide groups all the broadcast channels, say down on the 0 through 50, and you're up in the 2000s, or you're several clicks through like the old AT&T channel 99 system, you know, this is a slow form of starvation, of asphyxiation. Matt, want to?
Yeah, and I'm not up with the regulatory part of that, but I mean, in our case, you know, we have in the first 20 channels are 2 locally produced channels are in the first 20. So they're right up there with the off airs and the most popular channels there are. You know, once you move to that over the top format, you may have an application, say like a Netflix, where you're searching by tiles, or you know, the search function. It's not going to be the same guide that you see now as you flip through. So I guess you would need to think about where you would want to be put in that type of format. You know, so you're the first tile that comes up. I was just looking at the poll results.
Yep, I'm just sharing that with you because this is exactly what you're talking about.
Sure.
And most people were curious about an electronic program guide that we pulled. I'm just going to give you an example of our station that I was at. We started as channel 3, went to 96, then we were in the 900s. And when we were in the 900s, and we were under Charter Spectrum, and they had us in there as local access channel. So
Yeah.
it didn't say our name, it didn't say what was playing. You didn't know unless you went to that channel.
And that's
Yeah,
something that we've worked with our local channels on, as far as they send guide information. They send a text file to our guide. We've got two different guide providers, one for our IPTV platform and one for our linear coax platform. And they send the file. I believe it's from a Telestream. I don't know if that's where they create it. There's a Telview server, I believe. But you know, they send the guide information, and you know, it says PCC TV, or you know, for the title or for the channel label, and then you know, any guide information that they want to include for each program, actually. So it's definitely a capability and possibility for everybody to be on their EPG with accurate information, as long as you have somebody that can keep it up. Going to the IP part of things, we haven't, you know, we're actually changing our guide provider on our IPTV platform, and they're the same provider as we use for middleware for our IPTV and our new over-the-top offering. So, you know, we haven't gotten to that point and how that's going to look in that format, but my vision is it's going to be close to the same. We have the same similar guide format with that over-the-top offering, where we don't offer, you know, the Netflix tiles and that type of searching, where it's a more familiar set-top box type guide search format. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely available and possible. I can't speak for Charter, so you know, but I know they can do it.
Deb, may I ask you a question? You said you moved from 3 to 96.
Yep.
When your channel was moved to 96, what happened to the quality of the channel? Did it change?
Oh, of course it did. And
So-
the thing that's hardest too is we had to keep up with everything else that was changing. We were on HD for I don't know how many years. When it first came out, I switched our cameras out to HD, and our programming was HD, but it got sent to SD.
For those of you who don't know the bit of an inside joke I was sharing with Deb, cable operators tend to move less desirable in their view channels into the mid-band channels, 96, 97, 98, 99, that range, because those are the channels that were most subject to signal leakage, signal ingress into the cable systems, and it was hard for them to control it. So they basically dumped a number of PEG organizations around the country into the mid-band channels that were almost assured of having low quality. Now, that problem no longer exists because, frankly, cable operators had to tighten their systems. Otherwise, the digital didn't work. But they dumped you into the 90s because, frankly, they weren't doing signal leakage the way that they should have, and they didn't care what your quality was. And if you were interrupted again. I'm sorry. I just
Stop
love
that. I keep
example.
thinking my internet's going out.
I love that
It's his
example.
internet.
I love that example.
Well,
Anyway,
one question I have, you guys mentioned 5 years from now, it's probably going to all be over the top. So are you saying that the traditional cable systems that are now dealing with the cable boxes that can either tolerate MPEG-2 or maybe MPEG-4, that whole system, they're just going to, like, in 5 years, there won't be typical cable television subscriptions, that everything's going to be over the top? Is that what you're saying, that it's just going to be gone in 5 years?
I don't think in 5 years. It'll be a slower migration than that, but they definitely aren't going to be putting any money into that old system, or making it better of any sort. I mean, I believe their money's going towards broadband. If they're going to offer video, it's going to be in the over-the-top format via the broadband connection. They would like to get away from customer premise equipment that they own. So you go out and you buy your Fire Stick or your Roku stick or whatever, and they don't have to deal with set-top boxes.
Matt, I'm going to interrupt you there because I think that that's a great lead-in for one of the other topics, although it got the lowest response. It's probably a good point to talk about for just a couple of seconds, which is wireless drops. The most expensive part of any cable system to operate these days is the drop portion, from the tap to the back of the set. Turns out that kids play with drops, dogs bite drops, nails go through cables that are inside walls. And from an efficiency standpoint, exactly what Matt just talked about shifting the burden of the subscriber drop system to the subscriber and having wireless set-top boxes, I certainly envision two things happening in the next 5 years, which is you're going to start seeing cable systems, especially overhead systems, adding radios at each tap, basically converting taps to radio/taps, and migrating customers from cable drops to wireless drops. And this is especially true in a situation where you have channels on demand instead of bandwidth for all of the channels. If you've got set-top boxes that are wireless to the pole outside, and you've got only the stream for the channel that you're watching, you can very efficiently switch to wireless boxes. And then customer wants to go on service, they go to the nearest Walmart or whatever, pick up the box, turn it on at home, connect to the TV set, look at it's almost like syncing up when you connect with Netflix for the first time and you do the online syncing for that particular box. Because at the same time, what's going to happen, this is going to be the economic driver, is another thing that we've talked about, which is 5G. Having, if a cable operator is going to spend the money to replace their taps with wireless drops, at the same time, they're also going to be putting in provisions to provide 5G service to inside the home for 5G, as well as outside. But we're going to be seeing a fundamental shift. 5 years is probably a good time frame to see cable operators going to wireless drops and to being the wireless provider in the backyard. Because look, putting a cell site in front of someone's home now is a very expensive proposition. Putting a radio on an existing cable drop that's maybe one line extender away from the node, or maybe it's close enough that they've got fiber all the way. We're going to see a fundamental shift in evolution of cable technology towards wireless everything, wireless drops, wireless provision of 5G. This gets along the idea of shared random radio access networks. So just fundamental changes that evolve cable systems to being the backhaul providers, which is consistent, absolutely consistent with what Matt has said so far. Matt, am I smoking something in my pipe here, or what do you think?
Well, you might be. I'm not sure. As far as the wireless drops part of it go, I haven't seen much on that, and in my eyes, that would be farther out in the future. As far as we're concerned, we're still trying to get fiber, and we think that's the end all be all. I know wireless is, but it's inherently noisy, has issues, no matter what. We as a company, as Jonathan had explained about the drop, and especially inside the home, we've kind of taken it upon ourselves to not just have our demarcation point at the outside of the home and leave everything for the customer. We actually, as far as the broadband goes, and TV with the boxes, but as far as broadband goes, we're all the way up to the router and offering services to serve anything that's wireless in the home, and have a actual maintenance type service for that. So without being intrusive to the customer, we're trying to help manage their internal wireless network.
Very progressive and forward
wireless
thinking.
set-top box. What's that, John?
I was saying it's very progressive and forward thinking, because the cable operators are trying to limit their maintenance costs, but by limiting their maintenance costs, they're probably generating more maintenance. And as they tell the customers, well, if we have to make a house call, it's going to be, $69 for the house call and then X dollars per 30 minutes. And at the end of the day, you have a worse maintained system, a leakier system. So I support and salute your approach to it, Matt. It's the right approach.
Yeah, well, we're not a large company. We're cooperative. We like our customers. Try to treat them with respect.
That's a good one.
It's not all about the bottom line, which it is. We obviously have to stay viable, but and I guess the bottom line too is, regardless of the regulations, we see the value that the channels add to our system, to our subscribers. Many of our customers, we believe, choose our service just because of these channels. And then we've got an older demographic here. If a local channel goes down, we know about it. That's for sure. And through our IPTV system, we can see, it's basically like the Nielsen rating. We can see the most watched channel, and that's always up there. We offer actually the two local county channels that we offer. We do offer an SD and HD. So customers that can only get SD because of some limitation, at least they can get them in SD. But we do offer them in HD for anybody that wants them also. So.
Well, I vote for your comment be the comment of the day. We like our subscribers. I think that one wins.
No kidding.
But Mary, may I suggest that we open up for questions here, because we're getting towards the end of our hour.
Yeah.
I agree. I was going to suggest the same thing. Who has questions? You can just sing out, just talk.
I've got one. If I was understanding Jonathan about the drops and having a 5G from the pole to the house, that put in my mind, that's like putting a 5G router then in the house. And I'm thinking about that's going to bring the integration of a whole lot of different industries together that are going to be driven with 5G. I'm sitting in a house with solar. I bought a Tesla. I'm expecting to connect my car to the utilities. And that's just the beginning. And that, you know, and all the literature and stuff I'm reading about, that's 5G networking that's going to be supporting that. And our video services are going to be part of just an exploding integrated market. Am I off base here?
Daniel, you're not off base, but you're not 100%.
Okay, great.
It's my view as a 40+ year cable engineer. I still consider myself a cable engineer. I'm a emeritus member now of the Society of Cable Engineers after 40 years of membership. I'm a senior member. That where we're going are disparate streams. Number one, there's going to be a radio stream for the cable boxes, which will be different from a 5G stream from basically, if you think about amplifier enclosure now, a large amplifier enclosure up on the strand, you'll see multiple antennas coming off the bottom of it. Some will be for the downstream or the stream links to the customer. Some will be antennas for 5G on a shared radio access network for the big wireless companies. And by the way, I'm still pretty sure that it's almost inevitable that either an MSO is going to buy a wireless operator or a wireless operator is going to buy an MSO. That's where we're going. So the answer is yes, 5G is going to be introduced in homes because, frankly, from the local regulatory perspective, the fastest way to deploy the most 5G coverage is by the wireless network that's in the backyard, not the one that's down the street. Other questions? Ross, I see you percolating. Come on, you got to have something for me, old friend. Or for a too.
I did want to mention something. Back when you were talking about, we were talking about HD, and we were talking about that a lot of channels, digital SD channels, have been moved to digital Siberia, as it were. Right now, my digital SD channel is on channel 6, which means if you know the Chicago market, I'm right between channel 5, which is the NBC affiliate, and I'm between channel 7, which is the ABC affiliate. So a lot of people would have to go past me, basically, if they were just flipping from channel to channel. Now, with the advent of HD, and by the way, I don't have an HD channel as of now. I'm worried that my HD channel is not going to be next to the broadcast HD channels like my SD channel is now. Do you have any experience hearing about whether that has happened to other channels around the country? Because, yes. I understand that the technology is changing and everything, but there are still a lot of people who, flip through the channels looking for something to watch. Have you heard of any positioning, anybody that's done that kind of positioning on their systems?
Old friend, you're exceptionally lucky to be where you are.
Yes.
Not
No
because
kidding.
of the tune throughs, because frankly, a lot of people don't just go channel up, channel up, channel up. I think there are fewer and fewer of that. The real value to you is the EPG. Because when people,
right.
when you go to the EPG, what's the first screen you see? You see the low channels, right?
Yep.
And you're right there. So the answer to your second the question you really asked is the dirty process is, congratulations, Ross, we're going to be moving you to a new channel that is grouped with other channels like you. And it'll start at channel 20,942. Congratulations. You'll all be in the same area and people will be able to see you all at the same time. In about 13 years, when they scroll down to channel 2000 or 20,009, whatever it is. So that's what's happening. What is our control over that? Pretty much nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically only a matter of time till, these MSOs get rid of the digital SD channels.
But that's not the point. The point is that your channel number, frankly, is the value.
Right.
Because whether your channel is HD or SD, it's your channel number that is the real value that they see that they'd want to remove from you. Sorry.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
More questions?
Yeah, this is Jim Knightright up in Chicago, and I got a question. As for switching over to the Switch Digital or the OTT, how does that affect franchise fees? I mean, is Switch Digital, are they a way to get around that and say, well, that's broadband now?
The legally correct answer is, I don't know. Arguably, as we've all experienced, I'm sure everyone here has experienced this. When there's been a change to the cost to the cable operator that has lowered its cost, I'm sure that 100% of you will agree that every time a cable operator lowers its programming cost, it lowers its subscriber rate, right? Right? No, Deb. Oh, gosh. So the answer is, our argument is, if you want to transport us some other way, we get that, but that doesn't relieve your obligation because you've decided to transport a different way. It doesn't relieve us. It doesn't relieve you from the duty to pay the franchise fees because we're still providing that service. And whether you want to carry it over fiber or coax or switch digital or whatever, the logical argument is your duty hasn't changed because you've simply made a technical choice. I think that's the legally correct answer. And the question is, who has the money to try that case? And frankly, you're probably more capable of trying that case through resources than a lot of the other people who are on this conference.
Yeah.
So thank you on behalf of everybody else for the lawsuit you're going to file.
I'll take it up with our executive director.
Good.
Well, AT&T's method of carrying channels is very different from a cable system, and they were considered a cable system for the law because it's a subscribership to a series of channels in the, right?
And again, argue the reality, not the transport. And that's the successful argument. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yeah.
I think we should pick on Karen Hussman. Oh, what? Huh? What?
I have a barking dog and I'm trying to take some notes here and so I don't crap. But no, that's a really good point. I think that's all I'm going to say about their duty has not changed.
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm wondering, does anybody see now this, especially through COVID, this becoming a pivotal time where we actually can regain some control by providing now content, now that we're distributing online, we can also provide the data of where the channels can be found. It's also more relevant content because it's localized, and there's a whole lot more authors and producers out there than there ever has been before, because now shooting on the mobile phone is acceptable. So I'm wondering if this could be, and also as we're seeing new news evolve with the cable companies fighting with platforms like Roku, The CEO of Roku allowed the cable company like Xfinity to have an app on Roku, and it was quite terrific. So I just had a Roku box in all of my rooms, and I had all of my cable. But now they're going to say, we're going to remove it from Roku because we don't want to work with Roku. So that kind of stinks. So I think they're starting to pigeonhole themselves in a lot of different ways as well, which doesn't make it very, very good for them. But I think really the big thing is just making sure we're migrating to the future of all these streaming platforms that are online and in the cloud, and being on as many as you can, because that's really important in a way to actually get viewer eyeballs and then actually get the data of who's watching, what they're watching, what they like and don't like, so you can have more focused programming. So I just kind of wanted to weigh in there on those few things.
Nathan, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Hypothetically, you want to watch HBO, and you can get HBO OTT, and Matt's system is offering it. If you want to do it on a per minute basis, other people are offering it. Do you care where you get it if the quality is to a certain standard and the cost is the lowest cost?
Good question. What I care about, where I've seen it be different, is how they insert advertisements, how long they have advertisements play, and that usually determines the cost. Like some of these free ones, they're interrupted like every 5 minutes, and I would rather pay $10 to watch it than to sit through a 4-hour session to watch an hour and 20-minute program.
So it turns out that Matt's system is offering an OTT without commercials for $1 an hour more than the one with commercials.
Yeah, I would pay for that.
I think that's really a different and strongly potential view, because frankly, when you no longer lock the customer into getting a particular program via one source, which is where we're at now.
Exactly.
Then you start having the potential for competition. And when HBO says you can't sell it for less than X dollars, now you have some interesting restraint of trade issues. You've got some federal issues. But I think customers care about watching what they want to watch. I have CBS All Access, and I pay the extra fee not to have commercials, which means that the program I'm watching is 15 minutes less per hour. Okay. But I'm not watching commercials. We as customers are going through a change to make business decisions, viewing decisions like that now. And for small cable operators to offer video on demand without commercials or HBO streaming, I think that we could see ourselves in a competitive marketplace where they say, we'll offer you HBO at this dollar. It's 17 cents less per hour than it is from another provider. And by the way, we'll bundle a second channel with it. Those are the types of things that bust tiers and create new kind of mini tiers. We could easily go that because frankly, from a technology standpoint, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but from a technology standpoint, ignoring contracts, from a technology standpoint, that's pretty doable right now.
Very easy from a technology standpoint, yeah. Like you said, contractually, almost impossible, but
contractually almost impossible, but we live in a world where we think about what will be and what can be as opposed to what is. And I see that strongly as a, yeah. All right.
Yeah. That system is breaking. It's in the process of it right now.
Yep. Which should make you folks think about, it's almost like for those of you who watch YouTube and you know about Curiosity Stream and the other sub networks that are developing, maybe that's something that you all should be thinking about in terms of that type of service as well. Look, there is a market for everything. There is a market for everything. And maybe the market isn't just in your hometown, but if you're producing original content and it's valuable content and it's informational content and it is evergreen content, I think you have future streams that don't keep you beholden to just your local provider to getting your programming out. And isn't that really the whole goal here, is to get the programming out to as many people as possible? Obviously a rhetorical question, but just for thinking points. This is where Mary says yes.
Yes. Well, yes, a lot of food for thought here. I learned a lot through this session. I learned a lot through the process of putting it together. I think the whole conference, frankly, has just been really eye-opening in terms of what's out there technologically with over the top, with all these other, play services and all of this. I think the message here is that, we are going to be local, and we're going to be local distributing our content through a lot of different ways, and that we're going to continue to network with each other and find new alliances so that we can continue to push out more content to our local residents that's meaningful to them and to their local decision-making process and their local communities. So I really appreciate everything that's gone into this presentation. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everybody, for contributing your viewpoints on this and your experiences. And I think it was a great conference. Does anybody have any parting comments besides Ryan, who, I don't know if he's still here. Ryan is leaving Rice Lake, so there's a
I have
job
a comment.
Nope, he left. Aw.
Okay.
I have a quick comment.
Yes.
For those of you who are participating, please understand for this particular session, how much time Mary put into making this happen. And Matt and I and Ross have been on phone calls and having a lot of discussions, what she said at the beginning. A lot went into making this good, and there's always a lot that goes behind the scenes to making a conference successful. And I want to thank Mary especially for the time she put in beating us to death, making sure that this was going to be good.
You're welcome, Jonathan. I'm available anytime to beat you to death.
Cool.
All right.
Mary is very good at that, and I don't know where we would be without her. So.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is so true. So, any other comments?
Nope, just thank you all very much.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yep. Thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you all soon in person.
Oh, we were going to leave the room open for anybody who wanted to talk about anything else. Does anybody want the room left open for any other discussion about anything? Okay. All right. Well,
take care, everyone.
Yeah,
thank you.
Gotta go back to the real world.
Yeah, back to the real world.
Guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoom safely.